Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh. In this video I'm going to simply break down the concept of meta in Overwatch and answer the simple question, what is it and why does it matter? People talk about meta a lot, whether you're watching eSports streams or having people discuss team compositions or hero picks in competitive and even quick play games. I'm going to run through quickly what it means, what affects and changes it, why it's important, how it'll affect you in a game, and finally, how you should try to interpret it and work with it, whatever game mode or level of play you play at. Firstly, what is meta? In gaming and esports nowadays, the meta is generally used as a phrase to talk about the strongest or most prevalent competitive or esports level strategies, heroes, characters, builds or similar that are used in playing the game at a more competitive level, if they're playing the game, heroes or a particular map close to its fullest potential. So, now when you hear the phrase meta in a game, you'll have more of an idea as to what people are actually trying to talk about. What affects the meta and how can it change? Well, many things. Changes, influence, popular feeling, the spirit of the times and more. Here are some examples. New heroes. They'll shift the balances of team compositions as people work out new combinations. New maps. They'll require new strategies and hero mixes to play, depending on how they're laid out. Hero balance changes. Small tweaks to heroes and their abilities can have bigger impacts across the wider hero pool. Increased community knowledge. As a community gets used to a game and understands it more in general, then more strategies and tactics will come to bear. Of course, popular streamers, YouTubers and esports events, showcasing interesting things and showing off amazing plays and perhaps new tactics. And finally, innovators, those people who come up with crazy stuff that catches on. Perhaps more faddy, sometimes they can change things permanently. Why is meta something that's important and why is it shifting and changing kind of important too? Well, firstly, it helps showcase the cutting edge of play. In the case of esports level meta, it's good to see how some of the top minds, teams and players push the limits of heroes switching, availability, new heroes, maps and tactics. The Overwatch Open is on right now, for example, do check it out. Esports level play can show folks what they can aspire to, highlight new strategy and new things that you can look to learn from or enjoy to challenge yourself. Next, it's important for the health of the game. It's always good for a game to be as close to balance, or certainly not really imbalanced as possible, so that people can settle and challenge themselves. But new things are always good. It keeps interest in the game, keeps it fresh, and stretches that cutting edge of play as well. So change is good from time to time, and a shifting meta is too. Finally, the evolution and development of the game is also very closely tied to meta. A healthy meta helps a game develop. Teams and players, whether they're esports level, competitive ladderers, or casual groups of friends, will help shape and develop a game with the developers. That means it lives longer, has more potential for the future, and hopefully gets new people to play as well as keeping people interested. There's probably no such thing as an 100% balanced competitive game nowadays, and feel free to make suggestions to the contrary in the comments below, partially through the challenge of achieving such, but part probably also by design. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You don't want a game to be unbalanced to the point of being broken, but a stale meta or game competitive environment that stays the same for too long can switch people off, people can get bored, leave, and games can slowly wither. No one wants that for a game they love, be it Overwatch or otherwise. Okay, so how does meta affect you? Whether you play at an esports level, competitive in a group, or you're a quick play casual player, the concept of meta will affect the games that you play. And here's how. Firstly, trends. Trends of heroes, team compositions, individual actions or strategies will come into competitive and quick play from esports. This is really due to imitability. And there's kind of two camps of that. Things that are cool, my heroes or favourite players do it and I want to as well, just like imitating sports stars and sports teams, and also through a skill level. People who want to be better, who want to try and do cool new things and tricks that they've seen really good players do, self-improvement and competitive desire. People want to be better, that's really cool. You can kind of split those into two mentalities as well as to how meta will affect your game. One of them is more individual and the other is more of a collective consciousness. The individual one is sort of things people do. I'd say things like Genji's. The Mei wall strat on Hammeh attack is a really good example of this. It was shown in a tournament where Mei used a wall to bridge the gap from the high building above the Hammeh gateway to allow people to run straight through the choke point, maybe above a Reinhardt shield or another Mei wall. Everyone thought this was amazing, it hit the top page of Reddit, suddenly people started trying it, and then because people were trying it, people would immediately counter it. They'd set up bastions, all kinds of things to just mow people down as they tried to run over the Mei wall into the choke. Other individual things aren't exactly a fad. Seagull's Genji, for example. Seagull shows a great job with Genji and people get inspired by that and try and play Genji a certain way. The next is collective, or the collective kind of consciousness. I think this is a little bit deeper when it comes to meta. The perception, I'd say, that the esports meta or a competitive meta, maybe a particular setup, is the way to go. And you'll see these things repeated, whether or not they're actually right for the situation. They'll be interpreted as a broader collective wisdom or good or right idea. Those are the two main ways that the meta will affect you. Here's a couple of examples of those whatever game mode you're in. People suggesting the 2-2, 2 tanks, 2 DPS and 2 supports. That along with play that it's the meta, I'd be a rich man if I had £1 for every time I've seen that in the game. Well, okay, I'd at least be able to buy another copy of Overwatch. Another example of something that might affect you is we need 2 supports or healers as a stated wisdom when you already maybe have a Lucio, or perhaps we need 2 tanks when you already have a Reinhardt. So we've tried to define meta, what makes it change, give some examples of how it shows itself in people's play and thoughts in Overwatch, and given a few examples as to how it sometimes isn't the most helpful concept to stick to. Let's wrap up by making a few suggestions. How can you try to understand meta and use it to your advantage? I think there are 3 basic things here. Firstly, try and understand the basics of these key competitive trends. You don't have to watch hours of esports, but do give a few matches or streams a go. It's great to watch great players in competitive games. Try and find out what the trends are and understand them, and more importantly, the reasoning behind them. There are some great subreddits for this. I'd go and have a look at the competitive Overwatch subreddit and Overwatch University if you want to learn the game a bit more. There are some great people there willing to help out and really good resources to read and watch. Secondly, understand what these trends or the meta bring in terms of challenges at your level of play, whether it's your teams or the enemies. Let's quickly go back to my 2 examples from before. Firstly, the 2-2 example. It's fine if your team runs a 2-2 composition, but recognise that at lower to average levels of play, weak links in this chain can cause problems. In esports, where 6 players are all pulling their weight and exceeding it in their individual roles and positions and playing as a collective team, this is fine. However, in a quick play or lower level competitive scenario with 6 individuals, this composition has more challenges. For example, it will put more pressure on your DPS players to perform. At lower to average levels, it can be hard for 2 offensive, damage-dealing players to get the job done, particularly if they're picking something situational, say a Junkrat perhaps, above something like a Reaper. If your DPS can't get the kills, or your tanks or supports aren't backing them up the right way, your composition will very quickly mean nothing, and 2-2 isn't appropriate for your situation. I found this a lot playing at gold level, and some lower levels of play than that in the first 2 seasons of competitive. The other example, play 2 supports or 2 tanks. Yes, of course this can help, but again, it may put pressure on your DPS, or if you're creating a scenario where you have 1 tank against your enemy's 2, it may not be helping either. Once you've identified these challenges, I think the final thing is to have some kind of plan or understanding in place as to how to try and counter the situation that you find yourself in. Now, this comes from playtime, experience, and a little bit of knowledge. And of course, some counters are easier in any group rather than solo queuing, but there are ways that you, if you need to, can individually make a difference. On a real basic Overwatch level, this could be counters to Bastion shielded by a Reinhardt, or how to stop that annoying Widowmaker or Genji. Now, you'll never see these as individual problems in higher or group levels of play, but they can be frustrating in entry-level, competitive, and quick play. If your team insists on running a 2-2, but you seem to be struggling to kill the enemy team, consider maybe taking a Zenyatta as one of your supports if you don't already, or switch in a DPS depending on how your teammates appear to be coping. If you've recently seen an attacking team running an Ana and a Reinhardt, then you can expect a scary damage boosted piece of precision German engineering to be busting you up with a Hammeh pretty soon. How about having an Ana to sleep dart, using Mei to wall off, freezing away with a Mei, or similar? Of course, sometimes there's no way to get that attacking Widowmaker or Hanzo on your team to contest a point, whatever you try. Chalk that one up as a bit of bad luck, and move on. To wrap up, understanding the game's meta trends and shifts helps you know what the script other people are reading from is all about. You can then use this knowledge to help adapt your play and your teams, whether it's your team's composition that needs tweaking, or perhaps your enemies that needs countering. Cheers for tuning in to this little sum up of meta. I hope that was helpful to introduce the topic if you're not used to it from other games already. If you're already a competitive grizzled veteran, do let me know what you thought of this explanation. Do you think it's useful? And what are your examples of things that you found hard to counter, or perhaps pieces of received wisdom you've heard that haven't really rung true when applied in your level of play? I'd love to hear about them. Do check out my Overwatch gameplay, quick tips guides, lore and theory series and much more on the channel in the playlist here. And do like, subscribe and comment with what you think. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.